Hey everyone, Mike G here with Bonsai Escape. Today I've got a fun project. We're going to be repotting our baby Jade, the Portulacaria Afra. If you remember one of my previous videos, I went through a long explanation of trimming the tree, but after watering it, I realized it needs to be repotted. So stay tuned. All right, well here's the Portulacaria Afra, my baby Jade. And if you remember my last video or one of my videos, I just recently trimmed this. And again, I water a couple times a week maybe, because it is 80-some degrees here. It sits in the sun all day long. So it does dry out, which is good. But I realized that the water just puddles now. It's not draining anymore. And it's been in this pot for close to 3 years. Definitely needs to be repotted. I can dig down here and it's pretty hard and clumped up. Now, a couple months ago, I had a cutting and I've been letting it grow. I literally just stuck this in the dirt or in the soil and did nothing else other than stuck it in here and just to see what would happen. And I tried pulling it out earlier and it's pretty secured in there, which tells me it's got some roots. So I'm going to pull it out right now, because I am going to repot this. I might as well throw this little guy in, and I don't want to pull too hard because it does have some significant roots on it, I can tell. So I'm going to clear around it. These are just pretty much big chunks of lava and pumice. Still don't see the end of it, and I still can't move this thing because it is pretty secured in there. So that's a good sign. But that's how easy Portulacaria are, these baby Jades. At rooting. It was just a pretty good sized little cutting I took, and I figured what the heck, let's just put it in here as a little accent piece for right now. And sure enough, it rooted. Oh yes, in there. There was a point where it wouldn't even sit up straight because it was there was nothing to it. Now I've got roots everywhere. In fact, probably gonna need to take some of this stuff out, but I just want to try to baby it out. Wow, that thing got in there. Got some good roots, it looks like. Jeez, come on, little guy. I'm not gonna hurt you. I want to help you get big and strong like your mama here. All right, I'm getting a little bit of movement, but Jesus, that thing got in there. Yeah, that's got some pretty significant roots. The only time this ever got watered was when the big guy got watered, and it really did well. Jeez, I'm already down into the roots of the big guy, but let's see if I can get him out without damaging too much of its fine roots. But I am ripping pretty good here. This is about 2 months when I put her in here. There she is. So that's about 2 months of rooting and just sticking in the top of the soil, and it's got a pretty good root base. So I am actually gonna put this in some soil. Probably need to do that, so give me a second. Got all kinds of stuff going on here. One of the unfortunate things, and I probably should have waited to do this, but I have a lot of soil sitting around, older soil. That's okay to repurpose it. This soil came from, had a little more organic material in it, so I am going to sift it just to get some of the finer organic material out. I also had some screens for the drainage, but I'm going to sift it, get the finer particles out of the organics. There's still a little bit of organic in here with some pine bark, but the finer stuff is what I really want to get out, and this is what's going to clog up my drainage holes and doesn't really do well for Portulacaria, because, or most trees, because it is very water retentive, holds a lot of water. In fact, look at all that fine grit. This was because I also had some pumice that I mixed, so let's get some of this out. I'm going to only keep the, I think this is a 3/16 stream. So now I've got some good soil for the little guy. I'll dump this on the side. It is organic, so my yard won't mind. I got some pretty good material now. We'll do a little more sifting because I am going to want some soil for my portulacaria. Oh yeah, I got all kinds of drainage screens that were stuck in the pot. I think I used them in the big holes of the pot. That's why we sift. Okay, so one thing I will share with you, if you are doing this, you don't want to make a rookie mistake and just sift into the soil that I just put in here. So we've got to redo this. I'll be right back. All right, I think I've got the system down now. We've got sifted soil, goes into one can. Now I've got to re-sift what we just did because I just lost all the good stuff with the finer stuff. So let's do that. We'll sift over the empty pot. All right, we're good to go. We got the good soil, goes in the good pot. The organic stuff I'm going to dump in my yard to the side. My yard says thank you. And I think that's all the soil I have. I may not even have enough to do this tree, but we'll see. I don't even know what this soil is, but let's just sift through here and see what it is. So this is back when I used to live in California. I used to use a lot of pine bark, really fine pine bark, which is a decent organic soil. It doesn't break down, it doesn't clog, so let's throw some of that organic soil in there. Pine bark, again, sifted out all the fine critters. Well, I've got enough soil here for that little guy, so let's just pot him up. Basically, let's get some room. It can't be any simpler potting a portulacaria. Throw some potting mix in that I just sifted. My little baby Jade, the cute little roots. I'm going to leave it. I'm just going to dig a little hole. I'm going to dig a little hole in here, and then I'll just fill in around the sides. And as simple as that is, it's potted. I'm going to leave this on the side because I just put a few others, these little cups here from the cuttings I took the other day, and I'll just leave these. I don't just necessarily leave them in the shade. This gets sun until about 3 o'clock, so I leave them here for now and until I move them out in the sun. One of the problems is they dry out so quickly that they get tipped over in the wind. So back to the portulacaria. One of the things I'm going to do right now is at least check to see what the roots look like. And I do have some lava rock, so I'll probably use that. This has got a lot of pumice in it still. So I think I'm just going to salvage what I can off the top of this. And let me get rid of my sifters. Get rid of this turntable. One of my favorite tools is this root hook. I use it for everyone. And let's do this as well as we can. I'm really just gonna probably ought to take off this one guy wire that I have on it. Don't worry, it'll go back on there. Now I've let this dry out. It's been in the sun for a couple of days now. Probably could go a little bit longer to dry out. You want to let these guys dry out pretty good before you repot them. Some of that's just because of the repair process later. And I'm going to dump all the topsoil out, which is really just pumice and lava. and I'll show you in a second what I'm dealing with here, but we got a lot of, I use a lot of organic slow release soil, slow release fertilizer, so that starts to get built up on the top layer. So minus all that pumice and lava rock that I had, we've got a pretty full pot now of roots. In fact, this has a lip on it, so I'm almost uncertain I can even pull it out. I don't have it wired in because it was so established, so I'm probably going to have to get my tool out to hone around this root base, but this is bone dry, so hang tight and let's see if we can pick it out with the trusty root hook. If I can get the edges cleared out enough to pull it out of this pot and give a little visual inspection of these roots. But yeah, this thing really grew well in this pot. And again, like I may have mentioned in my other video, that this sits inside. Being in Michigan, it's not the ideal climate for Portulacaria, at least the winter time isn't. So this sits inside all winter under grow lights. The house temperatures stay around low 70s, so it gets a lot of heat. It sits literally by the heat vents, because unlike most of your trees that sit inside, this doesn't like humidity. It does better without humidity. So a dry indoor environment actually works well for it. There you go. So this is a pretty healthy root establishment, I'd say. Nice white roots. Look at all this. And this was pretty much just lava, and there may have been a little bit of, probably very little bit of organic in it, but I think most of the topsoil here is some of the used up or slow release organic material that I used to put on. So I'm going to clean this up, and actually I'm going to try something a friend of mine showed me with his Portulacaria to flare the root base, the trunk base even more. I haven't even looked at these roots, the flare of this. I haven't seen it really below that, but it's starting to establish a pretty nice flare at the base. I want it to be bigger, so he actually showed me a trick that he did on his, and it was pretty impressive. So that's what I'm going to do. And let's clean this out. I'm going to clean up here a little bit and get some soil set up for this. So give me a second. Okay, so now I've gotten the root ball pretty well worked out, and it's very dry. Anytime you're working with roots, you want to be in the shade like I am, but more importantly is not letting this root mass dry out. If this was any of my other trees, I wouldn't have spent probably this much time weeding out every one of them. In fact, usually my roots aren't, this one has a lot of downward tap roots because again it had nothing to start with. Most of my trees that I will be repotting already have tap roots cut out, but if those pine feeders dry out, then you're in trouble. So with the Portulacaria, you don't have that issue. And so all this thick stuff here, I'm going to definitely cut out, leave the fine feeders up top. But I'm just sorting through this right now, and looks like I've got it pretty much cleared out with all that stuff. Now I can get a pretty good look at my main roots, if I can. Here, this being the back and has a nice flare in the back, but my goal is to get the front flared out this way. So one of the things I'm going to do is work some of this root, this trunk in the front. A lot of these roots are going straight down, and I don't want that. This is the front of the tree. I want a flatter, established nabari coming toward me. So I am going to work that. You can see the back has a massive root coming out of the back of it, but it has this really cool flare coming out the back and tapering down. So I am going to work that. We've got some really good root development on the side here toward the back that will help thicken that, but this part's going downward, so I am going to work that and be very specific about how I do that and use the technique my buddy showed me and see what happens. Stay tuned. Okay, now I'm going to figure out what I want to do with this root mass in the front. I don't want anything that's crossing like this little guy here, so that's my first one to cut off, and see if I can wiggle him out. Yeah, he's going a lot of different places. There we go. So I've got that guy wiggled out. So we're getting a lot straighter lines here. I have this guy coming off the side going one way, but I can probably redirect it. The question is, how do I get, this isn't a bad root coming off the front, and that's going to give me some flare the way I want it. I've got to work this guy up. I've got to work this guy up where you can see it's going down, and a lot of it's because the way I had it planted, it was diving down into the roots. So I've got to get this thing flared upward. The problem with Portulacaria roots is they'll snap. So let's start with cleaning up the bottom. I've got a good taproot here. I've got a lot of downward growth stuff. So by cleaning this up, we'll get some good room. Make sure we get nice clean cuts so that when the pot goes back in, we're not going to get root rot underneath it. But you can see how healthy these roots are. Very white, crisp roots, no black, no smell to them. Those are all the ideal conditions this tree was growing in. And that's cleaning up pretty well. Probably still don't need some of these lower ones. Yeah, I'm going to cut a couple of these guys off right here. That'll help give me some room to get that flare upward. Yeah, I've got some guys growing the wrong way here. Get that, rid of that. I am going to reduce, I'll get rid of this guy. This appears to be his main taproot. I'm going to get rid of him because that doesn't need it. This time around, I'll definitely be wiring this tree into the pot because I have a root mass to work with. And all I'm trying to do is kind of work these roots spread out laterally. Get rid of some of these little buggers hanging down. Keep a little bit on this backside because there's not much there. But the technique my friend showed me that he did on his is pretty cool, and so we'll see. I haven't done it yet, obviously. So here's that root. Here's the guy that's going downward that I want to kind of get up. This is a guy that's crossing right here, and I don't like that. So I think I'm going to eliminate that and rely on these top guys to fill it, and we've got the second one here. So this guy, I think I'm going to get in and take care of him. Let's just do it. There you go. That was the downward one. Now I've got a little more clearing here for roots to come out straight. I've got this guy that can fill this in. I've got a nice top one here. I do want to get, even if this root that I just cut re-roots, we can hopefully get some direction this way. But what I'm going to do, go around the rest of the tree and see if there's anything I want off, anything that's crossing over top of each other and not doing what I wanted to do. But luckily this tree grew with pretty straight lines. I'm just trimming up some edges here that were growing up alongside the pot. I was going to, yeah, this guy here, I don't need this bugger pointing down. Get rid of him. I can get rid of these two guys. Get rid of this guy. Get rid of this guy. So now I've got a nice clear base for this thing to really push growth the top where I want it. That's a pretty decent root. And so I've cleaned that up, the root flare. I'm getting it. It looks nicer. I do want this to spread out. I need to figure out how I can mass this upward and encourage it to lift. So I can always put something under there. I'm just digging in here to get some of the bottom of it out. There's actually some roots coming off it, but I am going to cut the one that's going straight down. Now this guy has some lateral roots on the top that are feeding this way, so that's a good sign. That's what I was hoping for. Same with any of these guys. I'm just looking for the thick ones that aren't doing anything right now, that are going the wrong direction. And I just found you, little bugger. This guy here, that's not giving me, I guess it'll be all right. We'll leave that, it'll fill in there. This guy isn't really anything, so we'll get rid of him. We've got a nice Nabari establishing. I just want to get these guys upward. So I got three big ones. 1, 2, 3. This guy is going in the direction I want it to as well. It's got a lateral guy coming up. I need to encourage that upward as well that way. So I think what I'm going to do, this one's bugging me, so I am going to cut it off. It's going across. I've got some lower ones here, but I'm going to actually split this, and this is what my friend did. I think he just did it on a whim to see if it would work, because it was a cutting that he got and it didn't do, he didn't care if he lost it. But looking at the base of his trunk, I said I got to try that. So essentially I'm just going to cut into here, and you know what, it's an experiment. And the reason why I'm so confident with what I just did there, I basically cut into this trunk with these scissors as deep as I could go. He did that all the way around. He actually took a portulacaria, split it in half, bent the trunk, raffiated it, and it grew back together, and you can barely tell. So incredible that it healed the way it did. I was shocked. So with that being said, that splitting there should help thicken this and heal it a little bit more. I'm going to do the same thing to some of this here. do have some growing down guys I don't want. I just want these to go lateral to develop that fat base. So I did take my scissors and cut it right down the center, actually creating a gap. That'll fill back in pretty quickly. This stuff calluses over, so I'm not too worried about that. And the goal here is to try to get some fat, wider flare into the trunk. And I'm going to actually do that along this one too, right here. I'm still leaving some good roots intact, and I might do it on this side somewhere because that side is not doing too well. It's doing well, it just doesn't have any roots, major roots coming off of it. So what I'll do, I'm actually going to split it like this. I'm going to dig right into this thing, and I'm going to split this back end. And I know it looks aggressive. Whoops, that was probably very aggressive. I actually took a chunk out of that. Thank God it's the back. But again, you'll be surprised at how well this calluses over. I've really done a number on this to the point where I'm just trusting what I saw in his tree and what it did. The callusing over of this section will thicken it, and I'm thinking I might do that. Even though this is the front, I do want a flare on this side, so I'm getting it. I might get in here and clean this section out a little bit and do the same thing here. I'm just trying to dig into this base. There. So I've kind of basically split between these established roots to help let it flare out a little bit more and give it this push, which is what he did, and it was pretty impressive. So I think I'm going to do that, leave that how it is. I think we've got enough roots to work with now, and we'll just repot it. Looks good. Alright, let's get going here. I was debating on switching pots. I don't have a lot of pots right now, but I was debating on this white pot, and it gives it some nice character. I kind of like it. That's why I was looking at it. It's a little softer. It's not a bad idea. It's not a bad choice. That one, we're back into the red pot. The reason why I like this red pot, it's a little bit bigger, but it has that contrast with the it brings out the red in the branches. So I think I'm going to stick with the red pot right now, and stick with the red pot and let this thing heal over, give it some room to grow, and then work on something smaller later. So let's repot this guy. I've got my pot ready. I got to get a little soil in it. A little soil here, give you a view. And one thing I'm considering doing, and if there's anything you've learned about me so far, I can be somewhat aggressive with my decisions, but I've heard and read that to get gorgeous bonsai, you have to make some bold choices. I'm pretty encouraged by this, but what I was thinking is I might put something flat under here to encourage that flat spread. So give me a second, I think I'm going to do that. So I've taken a flat piece of plastic, training dish, actually one of those humidity trays, cut it out flat, and I'm going to lay it under like this with the base underneath this, and that should help keep it laterally growing, and give it that flare I'm looking for. So let's do that. I think I need to trim a little bit more of this out of here. to get it a little bit flatter. It's kind of a bulb up deal, and probably would have been better if I had my branch cutters, but Portulacaria roots and whatnot are soft. Just trying to flatten this out as much as possible so that it sits flatter on that plate. That looks pretty good. Yeah, it gives me a nice flat root flare, and that's what we'll go for. What I'll do is I'll put this in the pot and I'll put a little bit of soil over top of it just so that it doesn't, so it has some contact. Work that in, and it's not taking up too much room. It's still going to have room to grow roots to the outsides, but I think that's what I'm going to do. Turn it sideways a little bit, like that. Place her in, and really think about that front section. Now I've still got this bump back here, this bump, and this is again part of the planting process last time, because I had tilted it in the angle to get that tilt back, and it's this bugger right here, which is still it's a pretty significant root, but it's also crossing under and going wrong direction. So I just want this piece cut. I think that'll help. Yeah, that guy's still, that's probably going to come off. Let's see if we take it off. It's going the wrong direction anyway, so I'm not too concerned about that one. She was a big guy though. And if this tree, when I potted it the first time, got to this stage in 2 years, starting with 0 roots, I'm very encouraged to cut back and make it the way I want it to, because it does root back very well. So now I'm getting a better stable base. I can feel that. I want it positioned a little bit more toward the viewer. Yeah, and that's probably pretty good right there. Let's wire her in as best as I can. I'm not too concerned right now about the wires showing, because I want to keep this tree in place. You don't want movement. You don't want movement in the tree at all while it's establishing itself, so those fine feeders can really set in. So I'm gonna have to go probably over the top in the front, because the weight seems the weight's coming forward, so I need something holding it back. So let's go around the back side. Yeah, that'll help it. Clip some of this off. Actually, I'm going to change my mind. I'm pulling an audible like Peyton Manning would. Omaha, Omaha. I'm going to raise this up in the pot for the planting so that I can get a little bit more Navari showing in the pot, but also give it more room to grow down, more area to grow down into. That'll probably be much better, because it's a very shallow base that I've developed with this so far. Now you can see it's going to be sticking out of the pot. That's what I want. Position these roots around, and we'll go back to our touchdown play. Yeah, I think that's much better. Yeah, I'll hold that down there, and that will come across there. All right. So challenges I've I've raised it up so that the wires are a little short. But when you pull an audible, sometimes you have to expect the defense to respond, and they did. So let's just anchor this guy in, get it snug. And I don't want to go super tight on these roots, namely because these are the ones that I want to grow upward. I just want it snug. Once I get some soil over it, we'll even be better off. Yeah, this will hold it. This is going to go over the flare of this. So if I create like a little tourniquet around there, that will give it a little bit more flare as well. A little wobbly. I just haven't tightened it enough. Now we're getting somewhere. I think we'll go like that. She's staying in place. Definitely have, with that flat plate in there, it's not as easy to manipulate the position of the tree. She's all over the place. But I'm not too concerned right now about that. My biggest concern is letting it recover and getting that nabari to pop and spread on the trunk. So that's all I'm going to worry about right now. This will anchor itself in there. I think we're pretty good to go. Yeah. I do want this down. Yeah. When I work this soil in with my chopsticks, I'll be able to kind of manipulate the position a little bit more by filling in the front and the back, maybe even digging it out a little bit, but just getting some fine tweaks here. The nice thing is with this wire, I can kind of spread these roots and let it go around the outside of that wire. That'll help give it that flare as well. All right, I'm getting somewhere. That looks level, pretty level. It's pretty good there. I'm just gonna fill it up and go from there. I'm basically using my pumice and lava rock mixture. This is larger pieces of lava and pumice. I'd say probably over a quarter inch. But I do have some fine quarter inch in here lava rock. Again, some of this was just because I didn't have any more pumice on hand, but I do think the lava rock helps bifurcate and get the roots to grow finer because they adhere onto the surface of the lava and cause them to split. So now that I have a lot of soil in here, I'm just going to work this in. I'm going to lean it to where I want and try to get underneath that cup and work in some of those finer roots. And that's all I'm trying to do, is kind of work this lava rock in between those fine roots that were still left. This will help pack it in too. Now obviously on the top I don't have much choice. I have that plastic, which is fine. Some of the small lava rock is going to fill in there, but I do want to expose this top like that, the parts that I split. And just wiggling this in. Just trying to work those small little guys in, small little lava rock in here. And after I'm done with this, we'll be done. I won't water it now for There's a root coming up. I won't water this for a good probably week or so, just to prevent any possible rot to some of the roots that were cut. Let it callus over, kind of like those slits that I put in the sides. It'll callus over within a couple of days, especially being in the sun, which is almost the exact opposite thing that you would do with any other tree you would want to repot. Because you're causing so much root stress, you've got to give that tree time to recover. But the crazy thing with these Portulacaria is they love the sun, and they work differently. Someday I'll learn why. And it has to do with the characteristics of a jade. I did speak to a horticulturist about the difference between the vascular veins of a Portulacaria or jade and a typical conifer or broadleaf evergreen or maple, and it's all pretty much have the same characteristics. The jade isn't a hardwood, doesn't necessarily have, I think it has a cambrium layer, that's what she told me, but even she was kind of puzzled with my questions, so the debate's still out there as to why it works this way. But I mentioned in my trimming video that the Portulacaria is a fun tree, and one of those main reasons is because you can be pretty aggressive with them. From what I've found, I've heard other people haven't had that luck, but they also probably don't have enough sun, enough warmth and fertilizer. But you can be pretty aggressive with these guys and they bounce right back. And if I hadn't plucked this off a tree branch, bare stem, put it in this pot, and after 2 years seeing this kind of development, I wouldn't believe anyone either. But because of what I've experienced in the last 2 years of working with these, I can tell you they are champs. Just clearing off some of this top surface stuff because I do want to give some exposure to those slits I made. Maybe it'll help encourage a little bit of root growth out of them if I do cover it up with some finer material. But other than that, I think we're close here. Let's pull it out. And let's have a peek at this guy. I think we're pretty close. Positionally, it doesn't look bad. Just leaning back a little bit, so I'm probably going to put a guide wire on here, and that's probably a good thing to do. It will help secure the tree in the pot a little bit better. So I think I'm going to do that right now. So I've installed the guide wires through the pot, 3 different guide wires holding it down. The tree is very stable now, and now we'll just set it in the sun and I'll let it recover for the next couple days before I water it. Once all the cut roots and the split trunk sections callus over, we'll be good to go. And I think it's going to be really good. I'm excited to see what happens with it. And if you enjoyed this video, stay tuned for more, especially the updates on a lot of these trees that I'm working on. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Cheers.